Hello, this is Phil Tomzak, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the July 10th issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And let's start with front page news from the GTA, and it has the headline, "He kidnapped a man at gunpoint, but his charges were thrown out because police beat him and lied about it." And this comes from Jacques Gallant, courts and justice reporter for The Star. A Toronto man who kidnapped a man at gunpoint in London, Ontario, has seen his charges thrown out after police beat him up during his arrest and then lied about it in court. The misconduct included an officer forcefully kicking the then 19-year-old accused man directly in the face while he was already lying on the ground in a parking garage with his hands out, followed by the same officer violently grabbing the man's hair once he was standing in handcuffs, the judge found. The incident, which led to the accused losing a tooth and suffering a cracked jaw requiring tens of thousands of dollars in dental work, was captured by a surveillance camera, footage which contradicted the officer's accounts. The judge concluded that the officer who delivered the kick deliberately falsified his notes about the arrest to justify the use of force, and that multiple officers provided false and misleading testimony in court, including a constable who refused to acknowledge that the accused man's face was covered in blood, instead referring to it as a red substance of unknown origin. "I find that the defendant has demonstrated that to continue with the trial, considering this kind of misconduct, would be an affront to societal norms of fair play and decency, and serve to undermine the integrity of the justice system," Ontario Court Justice Kevin McHugh said Wednesday in a London courtroom as he stayed all charges against the now 22-year-old man, including kidnapping, uttering threats, and pointing a firearm. "The court must distance itself from this behavior to maintain its just processes," they said. The Star isn't naming the accused, as he is no longer facing criminal charges. His lawyer, Daniel Rechtschaffen, said the defense had to fight multiple battles through pretrial motions to get access to all the material to expose the misconduct, and he praised McHugh for having the courage to condemn the behavior of the officers. "My position is that if you do what these officers did, gratuitously assault a suspect in a case, create false notes, and then perjure yourself, you should immediately lose your job. There is no functioning justice system in which that behavior can go unchecked and the public can maintain faith in our police," Rechtschaffen told the Star. "I'm anxious to see what the Crown Attorney is going to do in terms of proceeding to seek criminal charges against these officers who were found to have perjured themselves." London Police said in a statement it was previously made aware of concerns related to this matter and launched an internal review based on information available at the time. The investigation was paused pending the conclusion of the criminal case. The London Police Service will review Justice McHugh's decision and consider any relevant findings as part of the ongoing internal review of this matter, said the statement. It was a jarring and despicable display. Armed with a gun, the accused man had driven from Toronto to London on December 10, 2023, looking for a man who had stolen money from him, possibly more than $100,000. McHugh concluded the money was proceeds of crime, quite likely from the drug trade. The accused and a co-accused man arrived at the apartment of an acquaintance of the thief. The accused took out a gun and then took the acquaintance down to his car in the parking garage to go back to Toronto in the hopes that this would lead him to the person who took his money. Police arrived on scene as the two accused and the victim were in the parking garage. While the two accused initially complied with police demands to stop, they began to run after an officer was distracted by a garage door opening. They still didn't comply after officers attempted to taser them, but ultimately got down on the ground once they were surrounded. It was at this point that the accused man, whose charges were stayed, was kicked in the face by Constable Derek Lacroix. McHugh rejected Lacroix's testimony that the kick wasn't overly hard. That statement was entirely at odds with the video footage and the objective medical evidence. Contrary to the assertions of officers once on the ground, the accused was not trying to move his hands toward his waistband, where a loaded gun was ultimately found, but was rather complying, McHugh said. The kick was not necessary to de-escalate the situation, but was rather a gratuitous act of violence meant as punishment or retribution for earlier acts of the accused, the judge found. The co-accused man was also kicked and hit by officers, but McHugh concluded the force against the man was reasonable, as he didn't get down right away and appeared to be reaching for something on the ground, which turned out to be a cell phone. McHugh nevertheless acquitted that man of all charges due to lack of evidence. A few minutes after the kick to the face, once the accused had been searched and was standing in handcuffs, Lacroix violently pulled on his long hair and maintained his grip for several seconds, to the point that the accused's face shot up toward the ceiling. Lacroix initially testified he couldn't remember why he did that, but then suggested that if the accused had had a hairband, he might have pulled it to search his hair, but the judge wasn't buying it. This was a jarring and despicable display of gratuitous violence with no possible law enforcement objective, McHugh said. Let's move on to our next story from the GTA on our front page. It has the headline, "A Brampton trucker known as the King is sentenced to 20 years in a U.S. prison for drug smuggling." And this comes from court reporter Betsy Powell. A Brampton man known as King was sentenced Thursday to 20 years in a Los Angeles prison after pleading guilty this year to orchestrating the transportation of massive amounts of cocaine and methamphetamine from the United States into Canada using long-haul truckers. Gurramrit Sidhu, 63, ran a cross-border network of truck drivers who made repeated trips through the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel, the Buffalo Lake Erie Peace Bridge, and the Blue Water Bridge, linking Port Huron, Michigan, and Point Edward, Ontario. The drugs originated in Mexico and were transferred to Los Angeles for distribution, where Canadians would coordinate the northbound deliveries. According to his plea agreement, in a one-month span in 2022, Sidhu arranged the distribution of 8 separate loads of illicit narcotics, totaling 523 kilograms of methamphetamine and 347 kilograms of cocaine, which law enforcement seized. The authorities say the estimated wholesale value was between $15 and $17 million. On one occasion, Sidhu arrived at a trucking yard in Brampton and retrieved boxes containing 80 kilograms of cocaine, which he transported back to his residence. The next day, he delivered 5 boxes to a drug distributor. He's the 8th defendant to plead guilty in relation to this case that involved multiple law enforcement agencies, including the RCMP and FBI, according to a press release issued Thursday by the U.S. Attorney's Office, Central District of California. Sidhu's plea agreement stipulated that he would receive a minimum sentence of 240 months, which his lawyer called severe, particularly due to his advanced age and health. Sentencing documents filed by the U.S. lawyers suggest it was Sidhu's own alcohol and drug problems that led the married father to make those poor decisions. Today he faces meaningful health concerns and takes medication for diabetes, high cholesterol, and is taking Suboxone for opiate withdrawal. Since his incarceration, he spent his time reading religious texts, gravitating toward any theology that teaches one to be a good person. He was extradited from Toronto to California in October 2024. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise. The documents include other details of his background. He was born in 1963 in India, and in 1974, his family immigrated to Ontario. From 2016 until his arrest in 2024, he lived in Brampton with his family. His childhood was marred by his father's alcoholism and violence, and adjusting to life in Canada was difficult as there were no other Sikh families in the area where they moved, and Sidhu spoke neither English nor French. He was picked on at school and left high school before graduating and went to work to help support the family. He married in 1988, and the couple raised a son and daughter. They live in Toronto and Brampton. Throughout his adult life, Sidhu supported his family through honest work, primarily as a commercial truck driver. He held a commercial truck driver's license and worked as commercial trucker from 2000 to 2009 and again from 2016 to 2023, the documents say. From 2023 to his arrest, he worked at a foundry in Ontario. He and two others were convicted for their roles in a 2008 kidnapping in order to recover the monetary value of drugs an associate believed had been stolen from an entirely innocent man. Sidhu, who was not the primary organizer but was heavily involved throughout, was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. His removal to Canada is certain upon completion of his sentence. However, the government has agreed not to oppose Sidhu's application to serve the remainder of his sentence in Canada under the International Prisoner Transfer Program once he has served 120 consecutive months. The sentence will keep him incarcerated until he is well into his 80s, irrespective of whether his sentence is concluded in the U.S. or Canada, the documents state. An estimated 1.5 million containers, 4.5 million trucks, and 1.5 million rail cars enter Canada annually, making it impossible to systematically inspect every shipment. Canada Border Services officials testified before a House of Commons committee on Canada-U.S. border security. As a result, the CBSA relies on a combination of technological tools, intelligence, and targeting to effectively manage risk, says a report filed with the House of Commons in May. Next story from the front page, Business News, has the headline, Flood-Ravaged Etobicoke Townhouses Revived as Life-Changing Homes for Families of Children with Disabilities. And this comes from Sadine Mohsen, staff reporter for The Star. The walls of 50 Torbolton Drive have sprung to life. Where weeds once ran wild, green grass is in its place. New wooden fences frame vibrant trees, and cream-colored concrete graces the building's exterior walls, a far cry from the pale bricks and yellow construction material that covered the 17 city-owned townhomes just last year. Since 2008, the Etobicoke homes had sat empty after shutting their doors due to repeated flooding and chronic water damage. Afterwards, there were discussions about selling the property, which Toronto Community Housing Corporation, the TCHC, ultimately decided against. At the time, a TCHC executive suggested the property's location, sitting right on top of Berry Creek, made it less attractive to a private buyer because any new development would have to be much smaller than Torbolton. Change was finally underway when, in 2019, TCHC received $9.7 million in federal and municipal funding to rehabilitate the space. Now, it has become the agency's first environmentally conscious passive house complex, designed for families with children who have developmental disabilities. Families could move in as early as next month, selected from internal transfer lists. Federal Housing Minister Gregor Robertson, on site alongside other political officials to celebrate the opening, said he was looking at every opportunity to combine affordable housing with climate resilience and to invest in similar projects. That's what people need right now, said Robertson. We need to contain energy costs and make sure buildings like this can survive the conditions of the future, which are already with us today. Robertson noted in his speech the importance of making existing housing infrastructure livable and affordable for families, rather than building on sprawling green space. The family piece of this warms my heart, he said. It's challenging to find housing like this anywhere in Canada. While the homes still sit within the creek's floodline, all basement access has been removed from residence units, said Adam Pellicero, the agency's design manager. Instead, they've been filled with stones and gravel, which allows floodwater to pass under the building, inspired by gabion baskets, a flood mitigation method. As he gave a tour of the refurbished units, he specifically noted the stillness in the rooms in terms of sound and air quality. The entire building has a net zero design, a 90% reduction in energy usage, and draws clean energy from solar panels on the roof. There is minimal energy loss, says Pellicero, who uses a jacket analogy to explain how insulation in the building works. It's making sure your jacket is done up, the zipper is done up, and there are no drafts, allowing little heat to escape. Just past the unit's backyards and the small creek, drivers rush past each other on Islington Avenue. Inside the units, however, the rumble of traffic can hardly be heard. It's all the stuff in the background that you might not necessarily notice, said Pellicero. We can actually make sure that the space inside is healthy and safe and comfortable for residents. This passive concept was deliberately planned, said TCHC President Sean Baird, as the units received guidance from Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital, which will be providing on-the-ground support for tenants with children who may have physical, developmental, or sensory needs. It's not often that 17 three-bedroom units are available in public housing, Baird said, with many families seeking larger, accessible, and inclusive units to accommodate their children. It's a pretty unique situation, he said. It is life-changing for the families that will live here. Inside the electrician's room, there's a blue ladder that leads down to the basement, one of the last access points within the building. Looking down into the gravel, Pellicero reminisces on his first day at TCHC 8 years ago to the day when he was first assigned 50 Torbolton Drive. He still remembers the crusted white lines left from the floods, the original healthy foundation of the complex, and all the potential it carried for future families. It's now their home, he said, with a shimmer in his eyes. They're going to take ownership of it. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And our next Star exclusive from the front page, it has the headline, Chris Alexander, former Conservative immigration minister, is considering a run for Toronto mayor. And this is written by Ben Spur, City Hall bureau chief for the Star. A surprise contender may be about to shake up the race for Toronto mayor. Former federal immigration minister and Conservative MP Chris Alexander confirmed to the Star on Thursday he's weighing a run for the city's top office. I am seriously considering it, he said in an interview on Thursday, explaining that a number of people and organizations that I respect have been encouraging him to launch a campaign. Alexander stressed that he hadn't made a decision, but hoped to make up his mind soon. He said he wanted to be certain he would have a platform, a team, and funding that would be credible, and make sure that a campaign was the right thing for his family. Nominations for the municipal election opened May 1st and close August 21st. Voting day is October 26th. So far, 26 people have signed up to run for mayor, with incumbent Olivia Chow and Councillor Brad Bradford, Beaches, East York, the only high-profile contenders. Alexander was elected MP for Ajax Pickering in 2011 and served as Minister of Citizenship and Immigration from 2013 to 2015 in then Prime Minister Stephen Harper's cabinet. Before entering politics, he worked in the Foreign Service and was Canada's ambassador to Afghanistan. He was seen as a rising star in Conservative politics when he first took office, but his time in Parliament ended in controversy. In the 2015 election, he championed the party's now infamous proposal for a barbaric cultural practices hotline. At the time, Alexander suggested the proposal would help protect women and girls from forced marriages and preserve our values. The tip line, which was floated as the Conservatives pushed measures seen by critics as targeting Muslims, such as banning face coverings from citizenship ceremonies, was widely denounced as intolerant. Alexander later said he believed the proposal cost the Tories in the election. He lost his own seat in the race. He hasn't previously been active in Toronto politics, but said he grew up in the city and moved back to Toronto in 2022 after living in Ajax. He worked as an executive at Hakelite and Company, a strategic advisory firm, from 2022 to 2024, according to his LinkedIn. Alexander suggested his outsider status could be an asset if he decides to run for mayor. He said, "It's important that we have new people, qualified people from a range of backgrounds in the race." Speculations about a potential Alexander mayoral run was fanned last week after Campaign Research ran a public opinion survey listing him as a possible candidate. Campaign Research is a polling firm run by Nick Kouvalis, the longtime advisor to Premier Doug Ford, who has also advised former Mayor John Tory. Kouvalis declined to say who commissioned the poll. Asked about rumors that Tory was among those urging him to consider a bid, Alexander acknowledged that he was someone I've spoken to. "I wouldn't want to go beyond that, and I certainly wouldn't want to imply that John is endorsing one candidate or another," he said. Tory told the Star that Alexander called him quite a while ago asking for guidance on a potential mayoral run. The former mayor said he gave Alexander advice, as he has done for other candidates, and while he encourages people interested in running for public office to do so, he is, quote, "not involved with anyone's campaign in any way." And next from the front page, under investigations, this one has a headline, "ToonyBet is on a hot streak in Ontario's online betting market. Its parent company is linked to a $1 billion network of blacklisted casinos." This is written by Emma McIntosh, investigative reporter, and Maxence Peignet, Investigate Europe. ToonyBet seemed like a success story born from Ontario's brand new online betting market. Within a year of the website's 2024 launch in Ontario, it boasted a library of thousands of games and recorded steady growth, landing splashy partnerships with the Canadian Football League and the Ottawa Senators that would raise its profile among sports bettors. More deals with sports teams and leagues followed as the company eyed expansion to Alberta. The success of ToonyBet, with its explicitly Canadian branding, seemed to show that Ontario's regulated market for online gambling was the win-win-win officials had promised. Profits pouring into online casinos, jobs and tax revenue flowing into the province, and safe, responsible online gaming for bettors. But while ToonyBet has gained a foothold in Ontario's regulated market, its parent company, Soft2Bet, is linked to unlicensed sites also targeting Canadians. Some of those sites have already run afoul of European regulators. An investigation by the Star, in partnership with Investigate Europe and media in 14 other countries, has found Soft2Bet and associated companies have raked in nearly $1 billion from a global network of casino websites, many registered offshore, that have been fined or blacklisted in other jurisdictions for operating without a license. The unlicensed casinos connected to an Ontario licensee. Betting sites are often not allowed to operate without permission from local authorities. In the tough-to-regulate world of online gambling, many do so anyway. At OnlySpins.com, a Soft2Bet linked sex-themed gambling site that is unlicensed in Ontario, does not verify users' age and is blacklisted by regulators in Poland, Italy, and Greece, a Star reporter easily set up an account under a fake name and Toronto address. At that site and two others where the Star placed bets, customer support agents told a reporter posing as an addicted gambler that they lose their winnings if they close their accounts, apparently in violation of Ontario guidelines meant to protect vulnerable bettors. The sites, which allowed users to set their language to Canadian English and transact in Canadian dollars, also did not verify the reporter's identity as required by Ontario rules, which means they are open to underage users and gambling addicts who have self-excluded from the province's other online and in-person casinos. When Ontario rolled out its online gambling market in 2022, licensing was a key component to protect bettors, the government said. Unlicensed gray market betting sites often expose consumers to a greater risk of harm, with practices that can exacerbate addiction or facilitate criminal activity like money laundering and match fixing. The licensed market has exploded. In 2024-25, 2.6 million accounts wagered to $82.7 billion, adding $2.9 billion in revenue to government coffers. Ontario has so far granted licenses to over 80 gambling sites. As the province's gambling regulator renewed Toonybet's license in March 2026, it had already been reported by Investigate Europe that parent company Soft2Bet and its affiliated unlicensed sites were running afoul of international regulators, raising new questions about whether the Ford government has sufficiently vetted entrance to the province's online gambling market. Ontario's responsible gaming standards ban registered gambling companies from operating unlicensed sites in the province. Subsidiary Toonybet, which is registered in Ontario under a Malta-based Soft2Bet company named Canadix Limited, is not accused of wrongdoing or of running unlicensed gambling sites. Time to move on to some sports news. It's actually an opinion piece, and it has a headline: The Carolina Hurricanes prove owners now have carte blanche over who gets their name on the trophy. And this is written by Dave Feshuk, sports columnist for The Star. It's a player's first detail that sets the NHL apart. When a champion is decided and the commissioner emerges with the Stanley Cup, he hands the trophy to the captain of the winning team. In the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball, the prize is first passed to the winning owner. Perhaps that's why Tom Dundon, owner of the Stanley Cup champion Carolina Hurricanes, made a not-so-subtle demand that people notice him this week. When the Hurricanes posted a picture of the freshly engraved Stanley Cup on Wednesday night, the image was shockingly Dundon-centric. No less than the first 7 newly engraved names on the trophy are Dundons. That would include the owner and his wife, Verushka, plus each of their 5 children, Caden, Dax, Drew, Blake, and Tegan. Each of the children, who, according to various reports, range in age from their early 20s to 9 or 10, are listed ahead of anyone who scored a goal or procured a player or drew up a game plan. To be clear, it's not unusual for NHL owners to include the names of family members on the trophy. When the Florida Panthers won back-to-back titles in 2024 and 25, 5 members of the Viola family, including owners Vincent and Teresa Viola, were engraved on the cup. And fair enough, the Viola's 3 sons have all occupied roles in the Panthers' operation. It's unclear if any of the Dundon children can stay the same. The Hurricanes declined to answer questions on the topic through a spokesperson, which is perhaps part of the reason why the Dundon family domination of this year's cup engraving drew so many social media eyeballs, not to mention the inevitable outrage. It's not right, Eric Zweig, the hockey historian who has written multiple books about the Stanley Cup, told The Star. You engrave the name of people on the team who contributed to the victory, not because it's cool to dedicate it to your children. Given that there are a limited number of names and there are people who have worked their whole lives in hockey to achieve this, it's not right. According to an NHL spokesperson, mind you, it's not contravening league rules. The protocols of Stanley Cup engraving go like so. The winning team submits a list of names to be engraved. The NHL reviews the list to ensure players, coaches, and hockey operations staff meet the established criteria for inclusion. For players, that's historically meant a minimum of 41 regular season games or 1 game in the Stanley Cup final, although teams have petitioned to include players who don't meet those marks. This season, the Hurricanes might have considered the labors of Joel Nystrom, who played 38 regular season games for the club. Back in 1994, when Zweig said such petitioning first became a thing, Ed Olczyk played 37 regular season games and one Eastern Conference final game for the champion New York Rangers, which left him short of the standard. But lobbying from the Players Association and the Rangers eventually got Olczyk's name and that of teammate Mike Hartman, who played 35 regular season games, onto the engravers list. Perhaps someone will eventually make a case for Nystrom. As it sits, he did not make the cut of Carolina's 53 names, perhaps because the league adds a caveat to its cup-worthy criteria. The names of other non-playing personnel to be engraved are determined by club ownership, an NHL spokesperson wrote in an email. In other words, it's carte blanche for owners, which means we should probably prepare for the day when the name of some billionaire's family dog finds its way onto the hallowed chalice. It wasn't always thus. When former Edmonton Oilers owner Peter Pocklington included the name of his father, Basil, on the cup in 1983-84, the league apparently didn't take kindly to the notion that Basil had no role with the organization. The engraving of the elder Pocklington's name was later obscured on the cup by a row of X's. Pocklington passed off the incident as a clerical error. While history shows the occasional inclusion of a child's name on the cup through the decades, Stafford Smythe, the then 11-year-old son of Maple Leafs founder Conn Smythe, had his name etched in the cup in 1932 as Toronto's mascot. For years, tradition dictated that such immortalization was reserved for those directly connected to the team. Perhaps an inflection point came in 1997, when Red Wings owner Mike and Marian Ilitch saw to it that the names of all 7 of their children were engraved on the chalice, even though a report at the time said 5 did not work full-time with the Red Wings. An Ilitch family spokesperson was quoted as saying that all the Ilitch children worked in the family business in some capacity. The family business, mind you, also included the Little Caesars pizza empire. Which seems fitting. For players, seeing one's name etched on the Stanley Cup is often the culmination of a lifelong pursuit of excellence. For a privileged few, it comes down to family dough. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And let's stick with sports. We have another story from some Raptors news. Has the headline, Raptors put Kawhi Leonard trade on hold pending an NBA investigation. And this comes from Star sports reporter Doug Smith. When Kawhi Leonard sauntered across one of the courts at the Raptors training facility to sit and watch the Kyle Lowry retirement event unfold Tuesday morning, it caught many by surprise. And now no one knows when Leonard might next be in the building. The Raptors and Los Angeles Clippers have stepped back from finalizing a trade that would send Leonard to Toronto for Brandon Ingram and Grady Dick, with a handful of draft assets included, until an investigation into Leonard's last contract is complete. The NBA League office informed us that as a result of the ongoing investigation involving the Clippers, we would assume the risk of any potential outcome of the investigation impacting Kawhi, the Raptors said in a statement on Thursday. In light of this, we will wait until the league's investigation is complete. When that happens, no one knows. The independent law firm of Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz have been conducting it for 10 months and has yet to issue its findings. The next pressure point is a full NBA board meeting in Las Vegas, when it is sure to be near the top of the agenda, according to sources. But there are no guarantees any resolution will come then. At heart is the 2021 Leonard contract with the Clippers that may or may not have included illegal salary cap contravention points. Mainly, it surrounds a $28 million U.S. no-show job with Aspiration, a Clipper team sponsor at the time, that rewarded Leonard with a windfall he never earned. The charge is that the Clippers gave the money to Aspiration to give to Leonard. Los Angeles owner Steve Ballmer and the organization have been steadfast that they were victimized by Aspiration business practices and were not part of the process. We did not funnel money to Kawhi Leonard through aspiration. Like many sophisticated investors, financial institutions, and business partners, we were victims of a fraud initiated by Aspiration co-founder Joe Sandberg, who has been convicted and sentenced to 14 years in prison, the team said in a statement. But because of the uncertainty, the Raptors don't want to get caught holding the bag if the probe recommends a suspension for Leonard or, in the worst-case scenario, voids his Clippers contract. When the league told the Raptors and Clippers that Toronto would be held responsible if they traded for Leonard, the brakes went on. The best-case scenario is that either the Clippers and or Leonard's representation are somehow penalized and he's allowed to go forward with his career unimpeded. The Raptors are confident they'll find a way to navigate whatever comes and still land the 35-year-old Leonard, who was in Toronto earlier this week to meet with team executives. The Raptors remain eager to bring Kawhi back to Toronto and look forward to a swift resolution for our players, our organization, and our fans, the team statement said. Should Leonard be penalized, it's sure that the NBA Players Association will get involved to grieve any suspension or contract situation. That will further complicate the process and is another reason the Raptors felt it prudent to wait. The only time in league history that a contract has been voided by cap contravention came in 2000 when the Minnesota Timberwolves lost the rights to Joe Smith for under-the-table agreements. Is there a way for the Raptors to obtain Leonard under the direst of outcomes? Toronto has no appreciable money left under the salary cap to make him a substantial offer, but there would certainly be negotiations and perhaps other transactions to free up the space to get him. Leonard is due to earn about $50 million on the final year of this contract, and if the transaction is finally approved, is eligible for a contract extension with Toronto that could be as big as 2 years and about $125 million. But until the result of the outside law firm's investigation is done, no one's speaking freely about the possibility of an extension or even Leonard's appearance back in a Raptors uniform. Fan bases in 2 cities? Wait. We recognize the uncertainty this has created and the impact it has had on our teams, our fans, the Raptors organization, their fans, and the players whose future remains affected while this process continues, the Clippers' statement said. We remain confident that when the facts are evaluated fairly and thoroughly, the NBA will confirm exactly what we have said from the beginning. We have not done what we are accused of doing. Let's move on now to the life section in today's Star. And under relationships, this one has a headline, The Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry Romance Timeline, from holding hands in Paris and Davos to a TikTok dance. And this comes from Liban Osman, staff reporter. Justin Trudeau and pop star Katy Perry are red carpet official after sparking all kinds of buzz on social media with their Coachella appearance for Justin Bieber's set. The pair was photographed dressed to the nines on the carpet of the Tribeca Film Festival. Prior to Tribeca, the duo was partying in California's deserts, in Switzerland at Davos, and before that, the two had a lunch meeting with Japanese politician Fumio Kishida and his wife in December. A post shared by the former Prime Minister of Japan referred to Perry as Trudeau's partner, while Trudeau reshared the same post by saying, Katy and I were happy to meet with Kishida. Just 2 days later, Perry appeared to go Instagram official with Trudeau, sharing a series of photos that included a selfie of the pair and a video where they appear to be holding hands. The two were first pictured in public holding hands after leaving a cabaret show in Paris back in October. But how did we get here? Here's a timeline of the budding romance that has taken social media by storm since this summer and has seen Trudeau and Perry travel the world together. First, the separations. August 2nd, 2023, Justin Trudeau and Sophie Gregoire announced their separation after 18 years of marriage. In statements posted to Instagram, they said the decision came after many meaningful and difficult conversations. The former couple shares 3 children. Trudeau became the second prime minister to announce the separation while still in office. His father, Pierre, separated from his wife, Margaret, in 1977. And on July 3, 2025, almost 2 years later, Perry and longtime partner Orlando Bloom officially confirmed that they broke up after 9 years together. This was after months of speculation and years of on and off romance that saw Bloom propose back on Valentine's Day in 2019. The former couple has 1 daughter together. And then spotted in Montreal. July 28, 2025. Trudeau and Perry were captured by TMZ sharing a dinner at Le Violon in Montreal. This was in the middle of Perry completing her Lifetimes tour through 7 Canadian cities in the summer. Hours before the two were spotted having dinner, TMZ also reported that they shared a walk in Montreal's Mount Royal Park. They ended the evening at the Taverne Atlantique with some drinks. And July 30th, 2025, 2 days later, concert-goers spotted Trudeau at Perry's show. In videos, he could be seen singing along to her songs like Firework and Teenage Dream. And then off the coast. October 11th, 2025. After almost 2 months of silence regarding the rumors surrounding Trudeau and Perry's romance, images of the two kissing on a yacht in California went viral. The pictures, published by the Daily Mail, were taken by a tourist who passed by Perry's 24-meter yacht off the coast of Santa Barbara, California. Sources reportedly told the publication that Perry and Trudeau were making out. October 13th, 2025, just days after those photos of Trudeau and Perry hit social media, his ex-wife Sophie Gregoire posted a cryptic video about love on Instagram. "To hold on feels safer than to let go," she said in the video. "Love was never about possession, it was about presence." And then making it official, on October 25th, 2025, Trudeau and Perry made their first public appearance as a couple in France. The two were celebrating Perry's 41st birthday and were filmed by paparazzi holding hands while exiting a cabaret show at the Crazy Horse Paris, according to TMZ. A fan gave Perry a red rose while walking out as she was sung Happy Birthday, as they both were snapped by photographers entering a vehicle. On December 2nd, 2025, after a month of silence after being spotted holding hands in Paris, Trudeau and Perry were seen in the popular tourist area Asakusa in Tokyo on Monday. According to Page 6, they dined at Asakusa Sumo Cub Annex, a spot known to hold live sumo wrestling matches while providing traditional Japanese dishes. In a photo online, Trudeau was captured wearing a black coat, denim pants, and a baseball cap, holding hands with Perry, who had on a brown leather jacket, cargo pants, and a mask covering her face. Perry is set to perform 2 concerts in Tokyo at the Saitama Super Arena on December 3rd and 4th as part of her continued The Lifetimes tour. And then more jet setting. December 4th, 2025. The former Prime Minister of Japan shared a photo on X stating that Trudeau and Perry had lunch with him and his wife, referring to the pop star as Trudeau's partner. Kishida was in office from 2021 to 2024, and in the post highlighted that the two former leaders worked together to strengthen bilateral relations, including the formation of the Japan-Canada Action Plan. "I'm happy that we can continue our friendship in this way," the post read. Trudeau all but seemingly confirmed the relationship, responding to Kishida's post with his own, thanking him for his friendship and commitment to international rules-based order. "Katie and I were so glad to have the chance to sit down with you and Yuko," wrote Trudeau. December 6, 2025, Katy Perry shares a series of photos on Instagram featuring several coupley moments with Trudeau. In one photo, the two appear to be hugging as they smile for a selfie. In a video, Trudeau has his arm around the back of Perry's chair, and they smile at each other with their foreheads almost touching. And in a final video, it appears as though the pair, silhouetted from behind, are holding hands as they stand shoulder to shoulder. On January 7th, 2026, Katy Perry shares an Instagram post of pictures and the caption, "Holidays," with a heart emoji, including two with Trudeau. In one photo, the former Prime Minister appears swimming in a body of water under a blue sky, with the couple embracing in a selfie at a similar-looking location. On January 20th, 2026, Trudeau and Perry continue their international tour, this time stopping in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. The former Prime Minister delivered a speech on the value of soft power, drawing a small crowd of a couple hundred, while his successor, Prime Minister Mark Carney, spoke behind closed doors. Perry was dressed in a camel outfit and donning sunglasses, while many glanced and snapped photos of the music superstar. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And let's move on to our next story, this one from the world of travel. And it has the headline, "I traveled to Canada's most popular ski town in the summer and found a wellness playground." And this comes from Wing Se Tang, a special to the Star. "As soon as you connect your feet to the earth, we are taking in all the vitamins and minerals straight from the ground," says Chelsea Lyles, a wellness practitioner and spiritual coach. She slips off her shoes as she extols the virtues of earthing, our skin allegedly absorbing instant benefits from dirt. "The forest will also give us an immune boost," she swears. I'm too skeptical to believe any of this, but when in Whistler, a dose of West Coast woo seems only apt. I'm here on a wellness-themed press trip, and we're about to go forest bathing amid the lichen-tinseled trees around Lost Lake, a pocket of parkland within sauntering distance of the Four Seasons Resort and Residences Whistler. Forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, was pioneered by the prescient Japanese as a cure for stress in the early 1980s, long before the advent of doom-scrolling and tech-addled attention spans. There's no actual washing, just a cleansing of the mind. It's akin to taking an extremely slow walk while immersed in your scenery and senses. "This is my absolute favorite hobby," Lyles enthuses. She leads the way on a skinny path through overgrown foliage, urging our group to press our bare feet onto fallen branches as a form of DIY reflexology. Soon we settle upon yoga cushions near Blackcomb Creek for a meandering, guided meditation against the mood music of rushing glacier-fed water. Excuse me. Admittedly, my brain, not skilled at relaxation, is most mindful of the mosquitoes. "You don't have to do anything but just exist," Lyles coaxes. "Let the forest do its work for you." Later, I learned that Lyles' claims aren't entirely woo-woo. At the University of British Columbia, the Multidisciplinary Institute of Natural Therapy studies the science of forest bathing. Trees and other plants are known to release natural chemicals called phytoncides, forgive me, basically wood essential oils, to deter bugs and other pathogens. Apparently, as I breathe in the crisp Whistler air, I'm inhaling those protective compounds and their immune-boosting, mood-lifting benefits, too. Our morning excursion is part of the latest summer wellness programming provided to guests at the Four Seasons, arguably the fanciest resort in Canada's favorite ski town. The version of wellness offered here feels more like blissful self-indulgence than boring self-improvement. Instead of holing up in a traditional retreat, you can find Whistler's outdoor playground at your doorstep. The promise is that guests can strike a balance between spry activity and pampered recovery. This is the sort of resort where you can hike an alpine peak, blast down trails on a mountain bike, ignore your diet with wine and Wagyu, the specialty at Sidecut Steakhouse, do some guided stargazing poolside, and then drift off to dreamland in a plush suite. In the name of diligent research, I take myself to the resort's recently revamped spa, where the treatments are rooted in a sense of place. Whistler lies in the unceded, shared territory of the Squamish Nation and Lilwat Nation, so the spa has a long-running partnership with Squalin Botanicals, an indigenous skincare line based on Squamish plant knowledge. After my mountain botanicals massage, feeling totally soothed and scented with rainforest oil, I float into the new Ursa Lounge to sip tea under the stars. In the deep post-treatment space, the sparkling ceiling lights are designed to look like Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Fittingly, the constellation has long served as a navigational guide for travelers. When I visit in late June, the tourist crowds haven't yet arrived, but the weather is pleasantly balmy, and it's perfect timing for a bear safari. Jacob Coleman, a guide with Whistler Photo Safaris, picks us up in his Bronco SUV for the half-hour drive to the Callahan Valley, where we hope to glimpse the furry locals feasting on plants. We're off-roading in Whistler Olympic Park on what will be cross-country ski trails in winter. Coleman talks affectionately about the black bears by name: Priscilla, Scarface, Bumper Fighter. She loves to chew car parts. I've seen bears on almost every part of every road at every time of year. They can be anywhere, says Coleman, a skeleton athlete whose parents founded the safari company. Some people, they sit there and they scroll, but we need everybody looking, he adds, gently critiquing his device-addicted guests, reminding us to be mindful. I put down my phone. Alas, after more than 2 hours of cruising around, we turn up empty. But Coleman isn't wrong. The bears can be anywhere. Right after our luckless safari, we take a gondola ride up to the top of Blackcomb Mountain. Minutes in, we glide directly over a yearling, impossible to miss on the grassy slope. It seems like a wild coincidence, but Whistler and Blackcomb Mountains are home to 40-some black bears and cubs. In the summer of 2020, one even casually wandered into the lobby of the Four Seasons. Before departing without drama, the incident was caught on camera. After a leisurely lunch at Christine's on Blackcomb, where a patio perch offers spectacular sweeping views of snow-crowned peaks, we set out on foot. Whistler is a hiker's heaven, with numerous trail options on both of its side-by-side mountains. You can tramp all the way from the base of Blackcomb to the top, for example, if you have the stamina to stride uphill for at least 3 or 4 hours. But ours is a softer jaunt, led by Dave Coate of Coast Mountain Guides. Passing the Krumholtz, weather-warped trees, he points out iconic sites like Black Tusk, a dark spire jutting into the sky, and Mount Garibaldi, an ice-flanked volcano. We're strolling not just for exercise, but for the sheer beauty all around. Call it an awe walk. There's an emerging neuroscience of awe, the wondrous emotion we often feel when experiencing something vast. The grandeur of a glacier-sculpted mountainscape, say, or the infinite stars sequining the night. Awe is good for the soul, with studies indicating intriguing physiological effects, too. It seems to reduce the stress hormone cortisol and dial down a part of the brain called the default mode network. As psychologist Dacher Keltner, author of Awe, explains in his book, this finding would suggest that when we experience awe, regions of the brain that are associated with the excesses of the ego, including self-criticism, anxiety, and even depression, quiet down. In other words, awe makes us less self-absorbed, and this tends to make us feel better. A vacation can offer a reset button, but as Keltner points out, you can find awe anywhere, and just a couple of minutes a day will do. When I reluctantly leave Whistler, I take this little lesson in wellness back home with me. Let's move on now to Lisi Tescher's advice column. It has the headline, "My sister is so pretty, hilarious, and smart. So why does she only have 2 toxic friends?" Let's ask Lisi. Here's the question from the reader. Several years ago, when my oldest daughter was thinking of going out west to university, I mentioned it to some friends with older children in my yoga class. Another woman, whom I don't know, leaned over and proceeded to tell me not to let my daughter go. She then proceeded to tell us a horrific story of her neighbor's son who died after smoking a joint laced with fentanyl. I had nightmares for weeks, and then my daughter decided on a different university. I put that story out of my mind. My daughter wasn't a smoker anyway, and it was just too awful to ruminate over. A few days ago, my cousin told me her son has switched his first choice of schools and is heading out west. He is a big pothead, unbeknownst to my cousin. And now I'm in a panic. What do I do? Signed, Agonizing Aunt. And Lisi's answer, do not run over to your cousins and tell her this frightening tale of a teen fatality. Depending on the relationship you have with your cousin's son, you could talk to him privately as a caring family member. You somehow know about his smoking habits when his mother doesn't, so you must have some in with him. And as a parent with a child who already left for university, you could talk to your cousin about the things she should be talking to her son about before he goes away. Basic stuff such as how to manage his time, how to budget his play money, how to get the most out of the meal program, how to be very respectful with regards to consent, and how to be extremely careful when smoking dope, making sure it's clean, not laced and from somewhere reputable, not some guy off the street. Vancouver is frequently cited as the fentanyl or opioid capital of the world, so it wouldn't be out of pocket for you to stress the severity of this issue. Make sure he knows none of you are judging in any way, but rather looking out for his health and welfare because you love him. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the July 10th issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Phil Tomczak. Thank you for listening.